Good evening. Can you all hear me at the back?
Yeah.
Whoa. Right. So how was that then? Money is an important paradigm for all of us. Huh? We're born in a society, and somehow we learn about what money is. It's not really taught to us at school, and it's something important at the end of the day for all of us. Because as soon as we get to the age of work, we're supposed to be earning that money and supposed to be using it wisely. So it's important to understand the principles behind money. So thank you, Nadav. Where is he? He's vanished. Now, going more into Bitcoin. How many of you are very comfortable? So those who are very comfortable with the notions of Bitcoin, can I see a show of hands? Okay, good. All right. Okay. All right. Okay. So yeah, what is Bitcoin? I've heard all kind of stories around Bitcoin. I mean, you may have heard that Bitcoin is the mark of the beast. I don't know if you heard anything like this, or that Bitcoin is a den of anarchists, of hackers, of drug dealers, of terrorists, of all kind of negative things. Now, it becomes confusing because, of course, Bitcoin is to do with money, it's to do with IT, and so it's not necessarily something that at first people can understand instantly. And the thing is that you've all seen in the mainstream media that the narrative has been more focusing on the negative aspects of Bitcoin rather than really the true story of what Bitcoin is. And this is what's important, is the true story. What is Bitcoin really going to bring us in the next few years, hopefully? So you may have seen this. Bitcoin is an open source protocol enabling the transmission of value across the internet. It's a big sentence. You all know what open source is? Anyone who's not familiar with open source software? Okay, open source software are basically lines of codes that create a software, but those lines of codes are available to the public. So anyone can download the code, look at the code. Most of the applications that were built prior to the internet were not open source. So when you install the software on a computer, you didn't really know how exactly the software was working. You just knew that it was working most of the times. Sometimes you had a few bugs, but you couldn't really go into it and see exactly how it was doing what it was supposed to be doing. So Bitcoin is giving us the transparency of the code. We know exactly what it's doing. There is no place for any kind of backdoor to be hiding. It's transparent. We can all go and check if we wish and find out that it's doing what it's supposed to be doing. Value. Now, value, Nadav, with his explanation of money, gave us a perspective about value. And value at the end of the day is something that doesn't have to be necessarily thought the way that we think about it at first, but we're going to get back to that. The protocols that we know already, you may have heard of military protocol, how people in the army are supposed to organize themselves when this event or this event is happening, or you may have heard of diplomatic protocol that dictates to people in the diplomatic rank, what kind of behavior they have to follow if this or this or this happens. A protocol is a set of rules, basically, that explain to the actors engaged in an environment how they should be engaging one another, how they should be communicating with one another. And protocols, we have seen those coming to the awareness of the public when the internet came through. We started to hear about the TCP/IP protocol, the SMTP protocol. So yes, indeed, there are many protocols already existing on top of the basic protocol of TCP/IP. The file transfer protocol, the FTP, the email protocol, the SMTP, and you're probably the one that most people already know and use every day, the HTTP protocol, which is the set of rules that tell computers how they should be displaying websites. So when you type www.something, your browser is presenting you with the correct information. Now, indeed, when you first start with just a basic protocol, it's very much a coder's world. When a protocol is initially launched, people have to use command line expressions. So I don't know if you remember back in the days of MS-DOS. Does anyone remember MS-DOS? Yes. Well, you had to type the commands on the command line, and this is how you were able to run softwares. So at first, protocols are very much, objects that only people in the IT world use, until entrepreneurs and other people start to develop tools that make it easier for people to access those rules of communication between machines. So those softwares, you all know them. The Netscape browser was one of the browsers that enabled many people to get familiar with the HTTP protocol. Then you had your email client. So I don't know if you're using Thunderbird or Apple Mail or Outlook. But these were the ways for people to easily access this SMTP protocol that was enabling people to send emails. The FTP protocol, I'm not going to even talk about this because probably not many people of you send files via FTP nowadays. But you can probably appreciate if you're using cloud storage, that this idea of transmitting files over the internet to put it from one place to the next was something that was at first not necessarily easy for people to use, but as we got more and more applications around it, more and more people are comfortable dropping documents on the other side of the world, on the cloud for other people to download and watch. Now, as the internet grew and people started to use all these new technologies, we saw that the people who were initially or originally in charge of the information, their power came to be contended, to be disrupted in a sense. So you see how today the newspapers are not the industry that they used to be a few years ago, pre-internet. A lot of people now are not necessarily watching TV or only getting their news from the TV stations. People nowadays are, used to go online and, checking whatever information they want to check by themselves. So this was very much the case as well for the cinema industry, and for the music industry. You all know how when Napster and BitTorrent later came into our came to us, we were able to suddenly distribute copyrighted files like movies and music, and that upset a lot of people. So now, indeed, what Bitcoin is bringing us is a disruption of another protocol, the protocol that transfers value from one person to the next. So yeah, value transfer. Like Nadav was saying, if you give someone £20, that person now knows that they have £20 at their disposal. If you're working not on a face-to-face basis, but if you're transferring money from one person to the next via your online banking, for example, then suddenly the value is no longer something that you're holding in your hand. It's just some data, some information that's stored in a database, and the person in charge of the database is able to, like Nadav was saying, transfer the value from one person to the next. And that goes for all kind of transactions, because economy, what we do every day, when we start to engage into the working life, is about buying and selling, whether you're buying and selling products or services, even when you're working. When you're working, you're receiving a salary. So you're exchanging value, your time for money. As you can imagine, the introduction of a protocol that enabled the transmission of value outside of the realm of what we've known for many hundreds of years can be very disruptive to people who initially were in charge of this value transfer. Value transfer of money, value transfer of shares, value transfers of debt, of bonds, value transfer of any kind of financial products. Anything that existed in the system that we've inherited, everything can be reproduced and improved upon using this new protocol of Bitcoin. And Bitcoin really as far as the wallet is concerned, is the very first application built on top of the Bitcoin protocol. And the wallet is very simply your ability to say, okay, this is my address. Those who wish to exchange value with me, i.e. pay me, can send money to this address. But this is really, and then, of course, you can send the money to the next person, but this is really just the very first app. We're going to see a lot more application coming onto this protocol. Some very exciting developments. I don't want to go too deep in things that are not Bitcoin, but you may have heard of other protocols that will enable the transmission of shares, the transmission of all kinds of other financial products, not just money. And there you have it, really. In order to really understand Bitcoin and to understand why there has been so much bad press around Bitcoin, you need to understand that the paradigms that we've grown up with are changing. And change is the one thing that's always coming, basically. That's the only constant thing in the universe is change. So now, after several hundred years of certain ways of dealing with value, there are new ways of looking at value, new ways of looking at finance, and this is very disturbing for those who control the original system. For many years, we've stored our money in a bank because we've been told that keeping your money at home may be unsafe. And we were talking about this earlier, how do you make sure that people don't steal your money? You put your money in a bank, and the bank has a system that enables to safeguard your value. But as we said also earlier, as we've seen with the Cyprus crisis, having your money in a bank doesn't necessarily mean that it's your money. And sending money abroad from your bank accounts is not necessarily always easy. Nowadays you're being asked why you want to send your money abroad, and you have to give reasons for wanting to move your money around. So the banks have safeguarded our money, but we have now the ability to do this ourselves, because this security of storing value, why not take it back into our own hands? And when it comes to securing Bitcoins, I know that I've heard people are concerned because you've heard of Bitcoins being stolen. This is something that you see often. And of course, you're dealing with money, so it's going to be something that is going to be, for hackers, it's going to be very interesting for them to suddenly come onto your computer and find out whether or not you've got some of those cryptocurrencies. But if you really want to secure your Bitcoins, there are some ways to do it that are not so difficult, that are not so expensive, and that are very smart. And we're going to go back to that when we talk about the wallets. Yes, the situation today around the whole world is not equally distributed. People in the West have access to financial services, and they're used to it, and for them it's absolutely normal. But if you go out in Africa, if you go out in Latin America, in some places of Asia, people don't even have access to banking. They're not earning enough money. In Indonesia, for example, the average wage over there is about $30 a month. So, why are you going to open a bank account if you're earning $30 a month? And how are you going to participate to the economy at large, the World Wide Web economy? How will you be able to buy goods, services, and products if you don't have a bank account? With a wallet, a Bitcoin wallet, accessible by anyone around the world, suddenly people from all areas of the world are able to participate to this economy. This is changing the way that we view banking. As far as those guys is concerned, they don't need to have access to a bank account. They just need to have access to a computer. The production of money has been, for a long time, in the hands of, well, at first governments, and later on central banks, the minting of money, but also commercial banks through credit. They've been issuing money. Now, the whole beauty of the Bitcoin paradigm shifts is that we don't really have to have such centralized networks in order to mint money and secure money. And this is where mining comes into action. So in the next presentation, you're going to hear a bit more about mining, so I won't go in too many details about it. But nevertheless, the idea that we can nowadays all participate in securing the monetary system, including the minting of the money, is now a reality. And it's done in a way that is totally transparent. So instead of relying just on institutions such as central banks, now we can create a new paradigm where everyone is involved in securing the transactions, minting the money, and verifying that there is nothing suspicious going on, as in I cannot send my money twice to two different people, the same money. Now, securing bitcoins is the most important thing, because if you become your own bank, then obviously you're taking away the responsibility that used to be given to those institutions, and you're taking it upon yourself. And to understand how to secure yourself, how to secure your bitcoins, you need to know one small thing, and that is that when you have a Bitcoin wallet, whether it's on a laptop or on a mobile phone, you don't really have Bitcoins coming into your computer. That's the very important part. What you have is you have just your ability to sign away your Bitcoins to a third party. And that's ability to sign away, the same way that you used to sign a check, this ability to sign your value, i.e. your Bitcoins, to another party is simply derived from the ownership of a file on your computer that's called a private key. So your private key is essentially the file that you need to secure if you want to secure your Bitcoins. There are different types of software that you can download on a computer. You can download the full client, which is the Bitcoin Qt client, or you can download a more lightweight version of the Bitcoin wallet, which is, for example, Electrum, an application that does not download all of the transactions onto your computer. So the lightweight version is probably the version that people who just want to start with Bitcoin should be looking at first, because it doesn't, constrain them in having to wait for the full download of the blockchain to take place on their laptop. And today it's about 8 gigabytes, I believe, so it's quite a large file. If you use a lightweight client like Electrum, you can do your transactions very quickly. You can choose to use a hosted wallet, which basically would be the same as putting your Bitcoins in the bank. So that means that you're now giving the responsibility of securing your Bitcoins to a third party. So you've heard of Coinbase, for example. Coinbase is one of those hosted wallet applications. So effectively what they have is they have your private keys. So they are the one who are able to sign away the transactions. When you log on to their website or their application, you're telling them that you want to move Bitcoins from this person to this person, and they do it on your behalf. You also have what is known as the hybrid wallets. Now, hybrid wallets are, you may know, blockchain.info. Anyone not aware with this website, blockchain.info? Blockchain.info is a service whereby now, when you run your browser, your browser has the ability to run some programs such as JavaScript. So those programs give you the ability to do various types of computation. And what blockchain.info has done is they've created a wallet that, in a sense, allow for you to keep in charge of those private keys, even though it's going through a third-party website. The private keys are generated on your browser. They are not kept on a third-party server, but you communicate to the third-party server to send the transaction. They handle that part for you. So you keep more control over your Bitcoins when you use services like hybrid wallets. The paper wallets, I don't know if you have seen paper wallets. Who hasn't seen paper wallets? All right, okay, all right, okay. So a paper wallet, again, is something like this. So this is not made of paper, this is made of plastic. But it's indeed the combination of a public key, as always. So this is the address where you can send the bitcoins. So I don't know if you can see that, but I'm going to pass them in a room in a minute. A public key and a private key. The private key here is hidden behind a sticker, the silver sticker at the center. When you remove the sticker, you get a QR code, and this QR code is the representation of your private key that you can upload or import into a wallet on a laptop or on a phone. The paper wallets enable you to keep your bitcoins totally away from the internet. Imagine, it's going to be very hard for any hacker to come in and scratch this little piece of sticker here. Impossible, right? And then for those who have a very good memory, there's the brain wallets. So the brain wallet, you don't even need a piece of paper or a piece of plastic. All you need is your memory. And what you memorize is a long sentence of words that, when you read the sentence, seem to be very random. But what those words do is they give you the ability, using an appropriate wallet software, to rebuild your private key. So as long as you know this sentence, you can use a software wallet in any computer and regain access to your bitcoins. So you can effectively travel around the world without any hardware wallet, any laptop, anything. Just a sentence in your head, and you have the ability to rebuild your wallet and be able, of course, to sign away your bitcoins, i.e. spend your money anywhere you are in the world. But you do need a very good memory for those. And the cold storage solutions are probably the elegant way for people to secure their bitcoins. And by cold storage, of course, paper wallet is a form of cold storage, but there's another form of cold storage. You can use a computer that you dedicate for the sole purpose of running a wallet. So that computer will never be on the internet. That's the one prerequisite condition. You simply decide that this is a computer that's going to be your bank, in a sense, and this computer is never going to be connected to the internet. But on this computer, you have the ability to install a wallet, Bitcoin wallet, that is basically the authority for signing your transaction. And in parallel to this computer, on another computer, you can have another wallet that has the ability to monitor the transactions that are going through your addresses. So effectively, when you do this, on the computer that is online, you monitor if you're receiving funds, and when you want to send funds, you create a transaction that has not been signed yet. So this transaction is basically a file that you can store on a USB key. You take your USB key and you go to your offline computer. You load the transaction in your offline computer, and from your wallet you can now sign the transaction, i.e. with your private key, effectively say that you're going to transfer this value to another person. When you sign the transaction, another file is created that you can again transfer onto your USB key. Then you go back to your online wallet and you can broadcast the transaction to the network. So effectively, when you use a cold storage computer, again, because it's not connected to the internet, no hacker will be able to come in and be able to snoop in your hard drive and locate your private key. So no one will be able to steal your Bitcoin. So, you know, we were talking about, you know, how difficult is it to secure your Bitcoins. It is not actually that difficult, and it's not even that expensive, because your cold storage computer can be a very basic laptop. You know, it doesn't have to be an expensive laptop. It can be made of, you know, any brand of laptop. I strongly personally recommend to use a Linux operating system. I don't know if you're all comfortable with the different operating system. Does anyone doesn't know what Linux is? Excellent. I like that. Good. So yeah, personally I would recommend to take a cheap laptop, install Linux, a version of Ubuntu, for example, that's available online. Install a wallet such as, you have the choice between either Armory or Electrum. Both of those will give you the ability to create a wallet on your offline computer. That
Can you just run by that last bit again, sorry?
The names?
Yeah.
So the name is Armory, A-R-M-O-R-Y, and the other one Electrum, E-L-E-C-T-R-U-M. They enable, both of those wallets enable you to have your offline storage and your online copy that monitors and create the transaction. This is very simple, I believe. I think it's simple. It's simple enough. But it does turn you into your own bank. You don't need to ask a third party to look after your bitcoins. You can do this yourself. Right. We don't really need banks. Seriously. Oh yeah, why we don't need banks? Sorry, I forgot to tell you. We don't need banks because too big to fail. Yeah, simple. The banks have served a purpose for many years, and that purpose has helped our society to do the things that we've done in terms of commerce. But they've shown to us that, unfortunately, there's a problem of trust. And at first, the one point that the bank told us is, trust us, give us your money. It's safe, don't worry about it. But they've shown to us that, and especially since the deregulation of the financial industry in the 90s, that when you let them go crazy, they do go crazy, and then everyone is hurt. So the paradigm of Bitcoin enables people to become their own bank, and that's the way that we make the too big a little bit smaller, and a little bit smaller, and a little bit smaller, until we don't even need to worry about them. I don't know how many of you have experienced sending money abroad. You may have, yeah, you may have, yeah. It's not cheap. It's not necessarily easy. Sometimes it's time consuming. And there's no reason for that, really. If you think about it, money in the account of a person in France and money in the account of a person in Africa are just some digits in a database, and with the internet you can very easily transmit information from one database to another database. So charging extortionate fees for sending money from A to B makes no more sense. And now it's easy to no longer trust, or rely on the existing infrastructure. You can just do that yourself. If you have your Bitcoin wallet, you want to send money to someone on the other side of the world, you can do it instantly. All they need is a Bitcoin wallet, and that's something worth carrying through, really. Yeah. So.
Very quick question.
Yeah.
Later, maybe.
Go ahead.
When you receive money in the Bitcoin world, let's say I send money to Italy, let's say, that is not really like taxable, is it? So is that even legal in a way?
Well, to send bitcoins, is it illegal? Is it legal or illegal?
Do you have to say something like, oh, they just appeared, I don't know where they come from? Is that the only way because of this gray area at the moment? Because as long as it's official, you cannot really rely on it. Does it make sense what I'm asking, or not really? Well,
at the moment, if you're sending bitcoins from here to Italy or anywhere in the world, as you know, Bitcoin is not really seen as money by most governments of the world.
Yeah, but if then you transfer it to actual money, you use it, where that money comes from?
Now, the conversion of that money into the fiat money, you may be asked, indeed where the money comes from. And depending on your country, you may have to fill up some forms to explain this activity. So, everything is evolving at the moment. The whole regulatory aspect of Bitcoin is evolving at the moment. Some countries are taking steps forward. Some countries are taking steps backwards. We'll see how every country is going to be handling this. But you know, if the law in your country tells you that you have to register such transactions, then obviously you'd better do it. Otherwise, you're gonna end up in jail.
No, I was just curious about how was the situation.
Yeah, it's evolving at the moment, evolving very much. So yeah, what does it mean for our government, for the issuance of money and the central banks? Well, actually, you know, in the democratic process, checks and balances are very important. The separation of power is very important. You know, the revolutions that have been fought in the world for bringing democracy to countries by people around various nations have been about spreading the power into more than just the hands of a few. And so you have already a separation of the executive power, and you kind of have the legislative power that's kind of separated from that sometimes, sometimes not so much. You have now, you know, the church no longer has the power that it used to have. You know, after the French Revolution, they kind of like got rid of the power of the church as far as the state is concerned. But now, as far as issuing money is concerned, we have for the first time checks and balances on the monetary system as we've known it. Because for the last 200-300 years, people have, well, those who have been in control of the monetary system have pretty much been able to do what they want, when they want, regardless of the conditions. And if, you know, crises occur, they call it boom and bust cycles. They think it's something normal. But for the first time, we have now a system that regulates the monetary system that we've inherited. So Bitcoin is indeed part of the new checks and balances for the monetary system. Because think about it, if a government chooses to confiscate money in people's bank accounts, they're going to try and buy some Bitcoins, of course, because they're going to want to secure their savings. In the same way, if governments choose to print additional money, people are going to start wanting to use Bitcoin more because this inflation doesn't really exist in Bitcoin. So Bitcoin is providing a new system of balancing the monetary system that has been in the hands of a few for many years. And that's a very interesting situation because this Bitcoin system, anyone can participate into it. So what can you do with Bitcoins? You can indeed save them, and that's a good thing. We don't always have to just spend the money we have. We can save sometimes. You can go shopping. Everybody needs to survive. And you can send them to your loved ones.
Valentine's.
Yeah, Valentine's, you know, Christmas, birthdays. Great birthday present. Great birthday present. How do you get the Bitcoins? Well, the first way is to just mine them, i.e. participate in this network that secures the Bitcoins around the world. So you buy some equipment, and off you go. You start cranking the machines, and you can start mining either by yourself. So you buy a big rig of Bitcoin, and off you go. You start mining, and if you find some blocks, then you get all of the Bitcoins just for you. You can join a pool. So your equipment can now be part of a bigger network of miners, and if you find a block, then you share it between the people in the pool. Or you can also now buy some mining contracts, so a form of cloud mining, so cloud hashing. I know we've got some people from cloud hashing here today, haven't we? All right, okay. So that's another way where you don't necessarily buy the equipment yourself, but a company buys the equipment and sells you shares in their equipment so that you participate in this activity. You can trade Bitcoins for goods and services. So if you're a freelance person, and whether you're an artist, a lawyer, or an accountant, whatever it is that you do, you can today say, okay, well, I will accept Bitcoins for my services. Or if you're a shop owner, or an artisan, and you're making produces even in the comfort of your home, you can choose to sell them for Bitcoins. And of course, if you don't mine them and you don't trade for them, then you have to buy them. So buying Bitcoins through exchanges. You've all heard all the stories over the last couple of weeks of exchanges having terrible difficulties, some of them with Bitcoins, but centralized exchanges are at the moment an essential part of the ecosystem, because as long as people want to convert Bitcoins to fiat and vice versa, we're going to need such exchanges. Now, the centralized exchanges, like the Mt. Gox and the Bitstamp and the others, you must remember that all these exchanges are going to require for you to fill up, you know, all your information. They're going to want to know who you are and your address, and they may want your driving license or a copy of your passport. Or you can also use peer-to-peer exchanges. So peer-to-peer exchanges are places where you can just meet people in your local community, or when you're traveling, you can find someone locally, wherever you're traveling in the world, who would be willing to buy or sell Bitcoins with you. And Dealcoin is the exchange that I created. It's a person-to-person exchange. It allows people to meet and decide, you know, how they're going to exchange the currencies. They can arrange all the details between themselves. For the sending of the Bitcoins, we offer an escrow service, so that when you're actually selling coins to someone, you can have your coins secured during the time that it takes for the payment to reach you. And the way that Dealcoin works is, you may have heard of local Bitcoins. The way that Dealcoin works is a bit different, in the sense where when you register to the website, you can post orders saying, I want to buy or sell X amount of coins in this area for this currency. And you can say, and I'm willing to trade at this price. This is roughly the price that I want. Now, the other people on the website can choose to accept the price that you've announced, or if they are dealers, they can make you an offer until you find a price that's appropriate for the people involved. I'm Hakim Mamoni. My background is in IT and finance. I've worked for investment banks. I've worked for central banks, but I'm a coder. That's really who I am. So if you have any questions, we're going to take maybe two or three? Two, before we move to the mining presentation. Anyone has some questions at this point?
What's the difference between exchanges and the banks? Because you're still trusting a third party, they're just as volatile. Where's the differentiation, or even big online wallets? Because they're storing your value. What's the difference between that and the banks?
Well, that's an interesting question, because recently I heard that Standard Chartered in South Africa, the bank, was going to open an exchange for Bitcoins.
Standard Bank.
Is it Standard Bank? Sorry, Standard Bank. Thank you, Michael. So those guys are a bank, and they're going to offer their customers the ability to exchange their currency for Bitcoins, and of course they're probably going to offer the storage of the Bitcoins as a service. So for banks, they can provide wallet services for storing people's Bitcoins, and the service that they provide, once again, is the service of securing the Bitcoins against theft. So hosted wallet services, again, are similar to banks for Bitcoins only. They will allow for you to store your Bitcoins in a secure environment. As long as their security is solid, you should be safe as well. So indeed, hosted wallets are banks for Bitcoins, and some exchanges, depending on how long you keep your money, i.e. your fiat currency or your Bitcoins on the exchange, effectively act as a financial institution in a sense.
Is it possible for us to lobby for regulations against these hosted wallet companies to stop them from creating something in which they could maybe credit other people based on the amount of Bitcoins they own? Exactly what happened with banking before, because obviously we all know banking started with people securing your gold in a safe, and then they lent out a piece of paper that represented the gold. Is there any way to stop these hosted wallet companies from doing exactly the same thing?
Well, you know, that's the thing about living in a democratic country. As long as you live in a democratic country, you have this ability to express your desire as a consumer, as someone who votes. So you can, yeah, indeed, and if you feel that something important is taking place that you want to see, or maybe you don't want to see, you should, you know, get involved and make sure that your voice is heard. And it's only the more people speak out loud about what it is that they want from their government, that their government will actually listen to that.
So in other words, no.
No, yeah, absolutely, because you remember, we vote with our feet here. We vote with our wallets. Let's say that tomorrow the government refuses to follow our expectations. We can simply decide that we're going to just get paid in Bitcoin. We'd say to our employers, well, from now on, I want to get paid in Bitcoins. And we no longer will use the banking system that currently exists. If the politicians don't want to listen to what we say to them in terms of regulation, then because Bitcoin is a decentralized system, because its nature is a peer-to-peer nature, it's a system that is going nowhere, basically. They can say what they want, but if you want to use it, they will not be able to stop people from using it.
Well, the reason for my questioning was, seeing as you're an advocate for the Bitcoin community, it would be maybe beneficial for you as a voice within the community to sort of start that process of discursiveness from the beginning to kind of, you know, if there was any lobbying in the future to government for regulation, it should perhaps be built into the system that these hosted wallet institutions can't then.
Well, I believe that from what I know, there has been already some conversation taking place with the UK government. Some entrepreneurs from England have been, talking to HMRC, have been talking to the people of 10 Downing Street. So there is some kind of conversation that's taking place. I personally, I'm not involved with this conversation, but I'm happy to participate with the people who have ideas and bounce ideas with those guys. So if you come to the meetups, you will see that there's a lot of people who want to exchange ideas on how to move forward with this, and everyone's contribution is valuable in a sense. Yeah, I think I may have to give the microphone back.
Sorry. Thank you. We'll do some.
Thank you.